Goldman Sachs Technology and Internet Conference is underway in San Francisco, where investors and tech leaders are discussing the IPO pipeline, M&A, and investment opportunity. Our Deirdre Bosa is there now at the conference with Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon. Deirdre, take it away.
Sarah, thank you for that. And David, thanks for having us again this year.
Delighted to have you here. Delighted to be here with you.
Well, so the IPOs obviously are front and center. You guys advised Casper. It went from a more than $1 billion valuation to about a third of that today. So what kind of message is that sending to money-losing companies looking to IPO?
Well, there's no question that the market is shifting in terms of looking for earnings and looking for sustainable earnings as we bring IPOs to market. I think some of the momentum that was really driving kind of an ethos of growth at any cost has definitely subsided. And so people are clearly looking to understand the path to profitability or clear profitability in these businesses. I also think direct-to-consumer, omnichannel businesses have a much, much tougher slog. And that's a very, very competitive space. So it's different for different spaces, but that's an example of one where they're going to have to build from here.
So when they're coming to a Goldman and they're looking for perhaps their last private market valuation, do you have to get real and tell them that's just not what the market's looking for right now?
I've talked a bunch about this over the course of the last few months because the IPO process has a different kind of transparency these days with all the private capital that's raised. If you think back a decade, 20 years ago, there was very little visibility on these companies before they went and started talking to banks about going public. Today, you've got private capital meshing with public capital. Private valuations are set because an investor sometimes makes an investment in a company, and the process of going public is one where banks sit down with companies and they really diligence their numbers, they really think about the future, they think about what investors will want and demand, and sometimes that's not in sync, and so there's a process that has to grind through to get companies to a place where the market will accept them in the public markets.
SoftBank and its $100 billion vision fund has been behind a lot of the biggest valuations, and Masasan is quite a polarizing figure here in the Valley. What are you hearing here at the conference? Has the conversation around him and his investing credibility changed?
Well, I really haven't heard a lot about Masasan at the conference. No, what's been great about being at the conference, we've got about 2,000 people here, about 1,600 investors. And there's an array of companies, that are here presenting. And so in the time that I've been here today, I've had an opportunity to talk to a handful of CEOs, listen to people talk about what's going on in their business. I just spent time interviewing Andy Jassy, who was talking about Amazon Web Services and transition to the cloud and the impact it's having on business broadly. And so most of my focus has really been taking the opportunity to listen to our clients tell me about what's going on in their business and how technology is evolving their business platforms.
Now, last year you said that if Goldman were out here in Silicon Valley, people would be throwing money to own a piece of the business. Why then, nearly a year later, do investors still place higher value on the likes of PayPal and other fintechs than they do Goldman Sachs?
Well, PayPal's got a huge business. It's got a huge business.
You have Marcus.
Well, what I was referring to last year, you're referring to the comments I made around Marcus. Look, we're very proud of what we built in our consumer business in a very short period of time. In just 3 years, from a standing still zero start, we've built a digital bank that has $60 billion of deposits, 5 million customers, $7 billion of loans, big credit card platform with a launch with Apple. And at the moment, we're not getting a lot of credit for that.
Why is that?
Because I think it's inside Goldman Sachs. I think people are in love with a trajectory of growth from a startup or a disruptor. And I think sometimes people discount the fact that a big established company can be a disruptor. And inside a big established company, you can build terrific growing businesses. And I think we're doing that with our consumer business. And over time, we'll prove that out. We'll show that. And over time, I think the market will reward us if we build a platform that serves our clients well.
But you're not going to move the headquarters to San Francisco anytime soon.
No, I'm definitely not. We have a big office in San Francisco.
Yes,
we have a nice office
growing.
at 555 California Street and growing, and I enjoy coming out here, as we were just discussing. But no, the headquarters of Goldman Sachs is going to stay in New York for the time being.
I got to ask you about markets because setting new record highs today. But this is an election year, and we got the results from New Hampshire last night. Your predecessor, Lloyd Blankfein, tweeting that Bernie Sanders would ruin our economy. Is Bernie bad for the economy?
Well, that was Lloyd being Lloyd. And so I'm watching this election, and I think it's super interesting. We're really at the beginning. We've had 2 primaries. We've got South Carolina and Nevada coming up next, and then we'll get to Super Tuesday and start to see, a process of progress. So to say that this one or that one is having any impact on the economy, none of these people are even the Democratic nominee yet, and then none of them are the president yet. So to start thinking about policy, it's a little bit early.
Is it early, though, for your modeling, for your investors to be thinking about what would happen in a Bernie presidency? Surely you must be thinking about this already.
Well, sure. Like everyone, I'm watching with interest.
So
but
is
to
he
be
bad
honest,
for the economy?
but to be honest, you're really not thinking about what if, because we're really, really early. And by the way, the indicator that people aren't actually thinking about what if is look at the markets. The markets at the moment don't care about any of this because it's too early. It's really too early for it to have an impact on markets. And there's also a huge difference between campaigning platforms, rhetoric, and then ultimately getting elected, becoming the president, having the right mix of who's in Congress, who's in the Senate to actually create legislation. And so I think the markets are sending you a signal that this is all very interesting. We all care about it. It's important stuff, but it's not something we're spending a lot of time worrying about.
Right. And I know, just very quickly, I know that you were asked about coronavirus just a few weeks ago, but this is a story that's changing on a daily basis. GDP being revised down, companies changing their guidance. Does this have the ability to throw off this market rally that we're seeing, economic growth?
Well, sure. The virus could have an impact on economic growth, and I think it's going to have a small impact on economic growth. Our research analysts were estimating, based on the current trajectory, that they think that this could knock 0.2 or 0.3% off global GDP growth. I think versus a couple of weeks ago when I commented on this, I think we now think the trajectory is kind of peaked, and I think we don't feel good about what's going on. We're obviously very concerned about our people, particularly our 2,000 people that are located in Hong Kong and China. But at the same point, I think the economic impact at the moment is going to be a little bit more controlled if it stays on the course or the path it seems to be on at this point in time.
Okay. David, thank you very much for sitting down with us. Enjoy the rest of your time in San Francisco.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for having me.